We're taking a peek into geek culture and sharing our top 10 fandom favorites. Let Your Geek Side Show presents Geek Culture Countdown. Hey guys, this is Kitty.
And this is Eric.
And we are coming to you live from the Sideshow Studios in Southern California. Welcome back to the Geek Culture Countdown. This week we are buzzing with excitement to bring you the top 10 bug-themed comic book characters. These heroes and villains take their names from any number of crawling, stinging, and flying insects that may be small in stature, but are big on power. While many people might see them as pests, these characters have infested popular culture with the help of additional films and television series, bringing them to the spotlight beyond their comic book origins. Listen along to find out if your favorite creepy crawlies made their way into this superpowered swarm. Let's get started. All right, so thank you for joining me this week, Eric.
You're welcome.
You jumped at the opportunity to join this podcast.
Yeah, I only wanted to do a podcast if it was about extremely obscure bug-related things.
Well, thankfully, we've got our list cut out for us today. There were a lot of characters that we kind of... Some of them were almost too obscure to put on the list.
Yeah, it's like, once you get down to it, you have to think, a bug. You're like, oh, spiders. It's like, spiders are not bugs. Mm-hmm. So we actually had to cut like a ton out of here. And we might even do an arachnid-themed episode later.
Yeah.
But, strictly bugs, 6 legs. You got to have, a certain amount of, thorax and some... It's, a very specific definition.
Maybe some antenna, maybe not.
Yeah.
So actually, I'll do this a little out of character. Usually we do the honorable mention in the middle, but for people who just tuned in and they're like, what number will Spider-Man possibly
exactly.
be? We're going to jump to the honorable mention right now.
We got to squash that now.
We're going to squash... Get out the can of pesticide. Our honorable mention is going to any character who is actually an arachnid and not an insect. So that includes Spider-Man, Black Widow, every Spider-Verse character, the Scorpion. And I even dashed your hopes because we had the tick on this list earlier, but I learned science today and I learned that ticks aren't arachnids.
Doesn't it seem like a tick should be a bug?
It seems like it should be, but there's something scientific there. And look, I'm an English major. I didn't study science, so it was news to me. Also, mites. So if you're looking for bat mite, even though he's more bat themed than mite, all the arachnids are our honorable mention, and we do have enough of those to do a completely separate list at a different time. So I'm sorry, spider fans. This is not your podcast. But with that being said, do you want to just jump in on number 10?
Yeah. Well, like I said before, there's a lot of obscure characters that are bug themed. And the first one we have is Ambush Bug, and it's from DC Comics. I actually had to do some research on this one, so forgive me if it's a little Wikipedia flavored, but Ambush Bug he's in a lot of obscure superhero teams. His name is Erwin Schwab, and I want to read this little origin story. It's 2 sentences, but it's even though his origin is disputed, the most commonly accepted one is that Brum-El from the planet Schwab sent his clothes from his supposedly doomed planet, hoping that his wardrobe would survive, only to have it intercepted by a giant radioactive space spider. In the resulting crash, only 2 articles of clothing survived. The ambush bug suit, and that was found by Mr. Schwab, who now dons the suit. That's crazy. Giant radioactive space bugs.
It sounds like a couple of comic book origin stories getting parodied there.
Yeah, definitely Superman inspired. Mm-hmm. But with the suit, the ambush bug powers, he can teleport.
Oh, okay. Is that how he ambushes people?
I guess so. I mean, I actually read one more little fact I wanted to share. At first, his suit was limited to teleporting him to wherever small receiver bugs were placed. So you had to go and scout little places with his little bugs before you get.
Oh my gosh!
Anyway, Ambush Bug, everyone's number 1 favorite insect theme hero,
is number 10 on our list. Obscure in this case is the gentle way of saying we kind of scraped the bottom of the barrel for some of these guys. And
yeah,
there were a couple of latecomers that we thought, oh, we could have done that guy and that guy, but they're not on this list. So we've got Ambush Bug. Number 9, we're dropping the ambush. Number 9 on our list is simply Bug. He's from Marvel Comics. He actually debuted in the Micronauts series that was based on the toy line, because there's a lot of those kind of 70s era Marvel comics where it's like, this is definitely based on toys. But he was originally called Galactic Warrior because that was one of the names of the toys. But some exec at Marvel was like, hey, he doesn't look anything like that actual toy. And I think it was Takashi Company Limited. They were like, oh, if any of the characters are named after the actual toys, they belong to that company. But if we make our own characters, we get them as original characters. So they're like, let's just change his name to Bug because he doesn't look anything like a Galactic Warrior. But then Bug, they changed it in the 4th issue of the series, and then he went on to star in over 70 more Micronauts issues.
Wow.
And then he actually jumped to Captain Marvel. He was in the Annihilation event, and then he was in the Guardians of the Galaxy. He was kind of a lower tier Guardians member for the new version of the team with like Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon. And interestingly enough, James Gunn revealed that in an early script draft for the first Guardians film, Bug was going to be part of the team.
Katie, I have to ask, do you inherently know this information or did you research this?
That was a bit of research, but
Okay.
my superpower is reading really fast and then repeating all the information as if it sounds like I knew it the whole time.
Dang, I was convinced. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And then he, if you look at him, he does look much more like a Bug than a Galactic Warrior. He's got big red eye lenses on his helmet, which help him kind of see extra peripheral vision, and then he has antenna that allow him to communicate with anything else with antenna, so not necessarily a Bug. I'm wondering if he can communicate with like an old style TV. I don't think that was exactly explained in the comics. But Bug is around, and the fact that James Gunn wanted to put him in a movie makes him pretty special, even if no one really knows who he is.
It seems like James Gunn really likes the weird. He likes to deep dive into comic lore and pull from there, and there's some other people on this list that he definitely pulled from. We'll be talking about, so
yeah,
I appreciate that.
And that Guardians roster, I mean, is extremely, extremely bizarre, and so that
It should be.
yeah. So
So next on the list is Firefly, who's a DC villain. Garfield Lins is his real name. He's an interesting DC villain. I've seen him pop up more recently in the Arkham video games.
Oh, okay.
But his bug-related factoid is that he's a sociopathic pyromaniac in a giant firefly suit. He flies around with a flamethrower.
Oh, okay. That would explain the choice of name and theming.
Yeah, he's typically one of those DC villains you'll see pop up at the very beginning of an episode for Batman or whoever to just dash and then jump into the actual storyline.
Did he begin as a Batman villain or just a kind of general DC assembly?
From my research online, he's been just part of the DC pantheon of characters, but most often I see him fighting Batman.
Because Batman doesn't have enough on his plate already.
No, his rogues gallery is kind of infinite. So what's next on our list?
Oh, okay. So from there, another guy who was created to harass Bruce Wayne in a low tier manner. Number 7 on our list is Killer Moth, who has quite the convoluted backstory. He's a man named Drury Walker who created a fake millionaire persona for himself named Cameron Van Cleer, and Cameron Van Cleer befriended Bruce Wayne. And Drury Walker as Killer Moth fought Batman. But in most of his appearances, he's not a really well-respected villain. He's just kind of, first of all, when you choose a name like Killer Moth, and then his original costume was purple and green with an orange mask, I don't understand why people wouldn't take him seriously. And he's got, as all good billionaire superheroes or supervillains do, he has the Mothmobile, and he's got
a bunch of... You kidding me?
No, he's got the Mothmobile, and he's got a number of other moth-themed tech items. He's got a cocoon gun and
So he's just a parody of Batman and
basically
moth theme. Is there ever an episode of any of these or an issue where him and Batman race in their mobiles?
Well, I know he uses it frequently as a getaway, and I'm sure there have been some car chases. He actually did appear in a lot of the animated shows. He was in the Batman. He was in the new Batman Adventures. He was actually in the Teen Titans as a semi-competent and scary villain. And he was even in an episode of the live-action 60s Batman show that never actually aired, but it was the episode that was originally intended to debut Batgirl, I believe.
Whoa.
Yeah. So Mothman, you know? And then of course, you know, with all these crossovers and crises that they're having in the DC universe, I know I said that wrong. There was one incident in which he was actually kind of Franz Kafka'd into a real like Mothman hybrid, and that was just pretty gross.
Oh, you mean like The Fly? Like Jeff Goldblum?
Kind of, yeah. But also, yeah, and like he could like spit acid and stuff, like, you know, like the moths do to destroy your sweaters. So because Batman clearly doesn't have enough to do, Killer Moth is number 7 on our list.
All right, jumping on to the next one, we have Mantis, which I was only, like I spoke to before, was introduced to it through James Gunn in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. She's really cool in that she has empath abilities and she can kind of interface with other beings in that way. One thing I really like about her as a character is she's kind of innocent and naive and kind of curious, but you know, used in the right context, she's very powerful. And I instantly fell in love with her when I was watching Guardians 2 for the first time. Do you have anything about like her in the comics? I'm not that familiar with her.
Well, I was going to say, interestingly, in pretty much both iterations in the comics and the movies, she doesn't really have any inherently bug-themed powers. I mean, some of the, I mean, I don't know much about the guy with the flamethrower. Like, I don't think that's a bug power, but like specifically for a character whose name is Mantis, she doesn't really. It more relates to her martial arts capabilities. In the comics, she's actually a really, really competent fighter, and she's believed to be what is called the Celestial Madonna, which there's like a kind of a Kree like group of monks kind of that believe like she's this big deal. And so they revere her, and she's taught martial arts. She actually just appeared in our top 10 plant-powered characters podcast because she does have the ability to commune with trees. She has a relationship to the Kotati aliens, which actually fans of the MCU might remember that name from when Gamora drops it when she's like talking about Thor's arms and like his muscles. She says that they feel like they're Kotati metal fibers. So the Kotati are a race of plant people, and she actually has a plant baby child whose name is Sequoia.
That's a nerdy as heck reference right there.
Yeah. So that was a cool way to kind of incorporate that celestial body. But yeah, Mantis doesn't have anything inherently insectoid about her. She does have those little antennae.
She has the antenna, and I remember in the background of a scene of Infinity War, when they're like getting ready, like when Thor wakes up and they're all like getting ready to like defend themselves in the ship. She's like standing in the back with her arms kind of, you know, pincered up like that in defense mode. But
and they did a really cool job with the costume, because I always think of the green kind of things that come off of the side of her skirt are very kind of insectoid as well. Yeah,
it's like those like insects have those different parts, like thoraxes and all the
wings,
segmented.
And yeah.
That was really.
I know science words.
Science words.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's interesting because she is a character who, despite her name, doesn't necessarily relate directly to apart from maybe some of the physicality, but it does have, I think, in the comics, have to do a lot with her martial arts prowess, because she can take names and kick ass, and kick names and take ass in any number of ways. I was like, I'm going to get the movie quote wrong, but I'm going to say it right. And in any number of ways in both the comics and in the movies.
Cool. All right, what's next?
All right, number 5 on our list. I like that there's a pretty good balance between Marvel and DC, and everyone's got their fair share of weird bug-themed characters. But now we're at number 5, so we are, I mean, Mantis was also identifiable, but we're really getting into the parts where these are the really well-known characters. Number 5 on our list is Bumblebee, but no, not the Transformer. This is one of the Teen Titans. Her name is Karen Beecher Duncan, and she debuted in 1976 in the Teen Titans books, but has since become a prominent member of the Doom Patrol. So her origin has to be one of the most bizarre ones, like the most bizarre ways to get membership on a superhero team ever, because she was dating Mal Duncan at the time, who was known as the Herald, and he was a member of the Teen Titans, and she was a scientist who wanted to help her boyfriend kind of look good in front of his new teammates. So she designed a super suit that it was bee themed, obviously, and gave her shrinking abilities, flight, bioelectric stings. Sounds like another hero who came before her in a different license, but she actually made that suit and went and attacked the Teen Titans, keeping her secret identity intact. She gave up the fight and kind of let it look like he won, and then she escaped and then showed up later, and he didn't know. And then she showed up later at Titan's tower and was like, hey, guess what? Like, that was actually me, and I'm not a bad guy. And the Teen Titans, instead of saying, like, lady, you're crazy, actually said, oh, wow, like, how cool. Like, you should join our team.
That's a heck of a job interview.
Yeah, no, that was the knocking on doors equivalent in the 70s for Teen Titans. But they offered her membership, and then she and the Herald transferred to Titans West. They were like, yeah, you can be on the team, but go out to the West Coast. We don't want you. Well, I was going to say usually the team's based in the West Coast, but they were on the subsidiary Titans West team. She's appeared in the Teen Titans animated series. That's one of my favorite series ever, so I always try to sneak references in when I can. But she's also been in Young Justice and DC Superhero Girls. And then an interesting fact that I found out about her was that she's often considered to be DC Comics' first Black woman superhero, but the honor also goes to Nubia, who was Wonder Woman's twin sister, who debuted in 1973, which was actually 3 years before Bumblebee. But because she's not the traditional like cape and cowl kind of superhero, most people go, oh, well, the first like in the action member of a super team, Black female superhero for DC was Bumblebee in the 70s. Yeah, pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So number 4 on your list is another kind of yellow and black stingy themed character.
That was a sick transition. The next,
I was like making sure that I didn't actually have the next one on the list.
We're gonna pop back over to Marvel for this one. This one's Yellow Jacket, which in the
full
comics,
yellow jacket,
full yellow jacket, which in the comics was originally Hank Pym, but more recently in the movies. And in the comics too, it became it was handed down to Darren Cross, which is his protege, who in the movies, is ultimately becomes the big villain of Ant-Man 1. One thing I thought was really cool about him was that he had similar powers to Ant-Man in terms of using the Pym particles and all that, but they only slightly hinted on it in the movie, but the Pym particles are actually like infecting his brain and like actually starting to make him crazy and like lose it, and something that Hank warned him against. And so he was like reluctantly like wanting to like force his inventions on the world, where Hank saw that and was like, no, we can't do this, and hid it and only let it sounds super cheesy, but like a pure of heart person like Scott Lang, if he be worthy, to don the Ant-Man suit, and he has a family. We'll jump into Ant-Man later, but Darren Cross, he's super evil, but really endearing as a character, and I think the comics and the movies in tandem flesh that out a lot more. Yeah, and I think it's also really interesting that they play on the idea that the repeated exposure to Pym particles could affect you in some way, because that's how, like, initially for Ant-Man and the Wasp, as characters in the comics, and you guys might be able to tell where we're headed with the rest of this list. You'll have to stick around to find out, but they initially had to administer a new dose each time they transformed, but after repeated exposure, eventually it just became part of their biology, so that shrinking and growing is an at-will thing. And fun fact about him, there was a Sideshow and Marvel collaboration mini comic that went out in a, Nerd Block, I think, or Geek. There was it was like a Geek Cube. Geek Cube. Yeah, something I don't... Dorksphere. Kind of one of those subscription boxes. Yeah, Dorksphere. Those are made up, people. one of those subscription boxes that actually featured the Collector and Yellow Jacket teaming up to shrink superheroes and put them in museum-style displays. And then you could buy them? It was it was for the collector's own collection. Yeah. It was like a super, super cool little collaboration comic. So if anyone who's listening actually checked out that subscription crate, which I can't remember the name of, and saw that comic, let us know, because that was pretty fun that they that Marvel was like, hey, like maybe Yellow Jacket could be the one who's like shrinking the people down to statue size. Yeah, nice. And everybody promised this was not an ad. This was just a genuine. That just happened to be a fun segue that I remembered. Do we do ads in this show? No. Oh, I mean, it'd be so like topical if there was like a commercial for like Raid that we had to plug.
Yeah, this episode is sponsored by. No, we are proud to bring ad-free content. I guess that's an ad for our ad-free content.
Dang it.
Anyways, number 3 on our list is the Blue Beetle, back to DC Comics. And I do love this balance that everybody's got their bug problems.
And their color that goes along with their bug.
Yes. So actually, the Blue Beetle has an interesting history because there have been 3 notable Blue Beetles, and Blue Beetle didn't even actually begin as a DC Comics character. He's been around since 1939, and he was he was created by Fox Comics, and then later it's one of those games of hot potato with like the smaller companies getting eaten up by the Pac-Man style. So Fox Comics had the original Blue Beetle. His name was Dan Garrett, and he actually he encountered a mystical scarab bug that gave him superpowers of flight, energy blasts, and this character later transferred ownership to Charlton Comics. And he had not only a comic book series, but a weekly radio serial. And he was kind of an Indiana Jones style adventurer. I mean, he encountered the scarab in Egypt, and so it was this fun like adventure style, but he had superpowers. So the second and most well-known Blue Beetle was also created by Charlton Comics, so not even DC yet, but Charlton was later taken over by DC. This is Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle. He was folded into the DC universe during Crisis on Infinite Earths, along with a couple of other Charlton Comics characters, I believe. Booster Gold also came along with that. And he actually doesn't have any inherent superpowers. He does have a genius level intellect and combat abilities, and he has tech that he uses. He has an airship called the Bug. He has a BB gun, which I also think stands for Blue Beetle. And then he has sight enhancing lenses and a protective costume. But then the third Blue Beetle was a young man named Jaime Reyes, and he was kind of the more post-crises, New 52 kind of era. And it returns the Blue Beetle mythos, if you will, to the kind of supernatural style, because he also encounters a mystical scarab. They discover it is alien in origin, and it gives him a supernatural alien suit of armor that is the more technologically advanced version of the Blue Beetle suit that a lot of people.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's cool, and there's like this ongoing mythos as the character changes hands, and his suit gives him flight. He can create energy shields, and he can even translate alien languages. So this character, it kind of started like, okay, we got the mystical Egyptian, like that's the thing that comic book characters do. And then they stripped him down to just a guy with tech and prowess, and then they brought it back to the alien mythos. So that's a really cool, I think, legacy, because sometimes when costumes or characters change up their mantles, it doesn't always make sense, but this is like a big continued
So let
legacy.
me ask you this. What's your favorite part of Blue Beetle? What's your favorite aspect?
Favorite aspect of Blue Beetle? Well, see, I really do like Ted Kord, and I really, really like his very happy-go-lucky bro-y dynamic with Booster Gold. That's one of those things that like I didn't actually know that they came from outside of DC Comics, but I was like, wow, they seem a little uncharacteristic of the DC stuff that I was expecting at that time of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
There's reason for that.
Yeah, and I love his big yellow goggles on the costume. But I mean, I think it is cool when they start exploring the like alien mythos, but I do just like the idea that it was like just an adventurous dude with a suit that protects him and stuff. So I have to say Ted Kord is probably my favorite of the 3. But all my respect to Jaime Reyes and Dan Garrett, who started it all in 1939.
Well, for number 2, I'm actually going to let you take this because she's one of your favorites.
Thank you. So we're back to Black and Yellow. And yeah, she is one of my all-time favorites. Number 2 on our list is the Wasp. I don't think we could do this list without including her. She is the woman who named the Avengers. I mean, she is the one who came up with it. Actually, the Wasp is now, as of the last couple of years, a mantle that's been used by 2 characters, but they keep it in the Ant-Man family. Of course, it was the crime-fighting name of Janet Van Dyne, a socialite and founding member of the Avengers team she was a longtime chairwoman. She recruited a lot more female characters into the Avengers at the time that she was the leader, including She-Hulk, and I think she brought back in Monica Rambeau, but Monica Rambeau was also a chairperson for a while. And Marvel.com actually ranked her the 5th greatest Avenger of all time. So that's no small dice.
That's official.
That is official from the mouth of God. Marvel.com said it themselves. And she's a longtime partner of Ant-Man, Hank Pym. And she was spurred into heroism to avenge the death of her father, because her father was a scientist who worked with Hank Pym. And he activated a kind of interstellar like gateway that brought an alien out, and the alien killed him. And she wasted no time and said, Hank, like, you do science, you do things. Like, I want to go avenge my father. She was the original Avenger. I mean, Captain America, yeah. But
Captain Marvel.
yeah. But she has the power to shrink and fly. I love what they did with her in the movies, actually, like, because I know you're really into the movies. Like,
yeah.
Like, first I was really sad in the first movie because like, okay, come on, like, I know.
Yeah, they held it back to the end.
Yeah, they held it back to the end, and I understand they wouldn't necessarily make a movie all about Hank Pym because he's got his things, but the fact that it was Michelle Pfeiffer, I was like, oh my god, like,
oh yeah.
I just hope we get more of her, because I want more of like, I want the mother and daughter being badass superheroes together, because like, for me, it was really cool because you don't get to see a lot of older female superheroes. Because, like, yes, you get to see like Magneto running around as an old dude, and you get all these like other things where they've got Old Man Hawkeye, Old Man Quill, and Old Man Logan comic book series now, where it's like specifically like the character is old and he's a grizzled badass. But like,
so you want Old Woman Wasp?
Yes, I want Old Woman Wasp with Michelle Pfeiffer artwork.
It'd be great.
Yeah, but she's such a fun character, and then. In more recent times, the second character to take on the Wasp mantle is actually a girl named Nadia Pym, who now goes by Nadia Van Dyne. And she is the daughter that Hank Pym never realized he had with his first wife, Maria Trovaya, who was a Russian woman. And Nadia was raised in the Red Room, and she was part of the like Young Black Widows program, you know. But she said, no, I don't want to be an arachnid. I want to be a bug. And she actually replicated the Pym particles formula. She escaped. She got to America. She tracked down Janet because Hank was off in space with Ultron, because comics are a mess. But because Janet was there for her, she said, she goes like, I can't be a Pym. I want to be Nadia Van Dyne, and I want to take the Wasp name and like honor that legacy. So it's just like, it's a really cool, really meaningful.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like respecting what's come before you and wanting to like take it on and into the future in a unique, cool way. And
Janet's still there. She's a super cool business mogul. She's got fashion lines. Like in the Runaways comic series that they did, like the second version of the Runaways, that was started in the last 2 or 3 years. Some of the characters actually wear Van Dyne branded clothing, and you can like like Chris Anka does a really great job, and like you can like actually see like the tags in the band that say like Van
it's
Dyne.
Stuff you'd want to buy.
Yes, right. Yes. Well, also because Chris Anka designed it, but so. Lest I gush too much here, number 2 on our list is the Wasp. And do you want to take it home with number 1?
Yeah, I will. But I just want to preface that I think 1 and 2 are arguably interchangeable.
Yeah.
But number 1 for me is Ant-Man. He's the reason I signed up for this podcast.
It was in the contract, you know, the invisible contract that we made. He's like, but I'm going to talk about
Ant-Man. I will not do it unless Ant-Man's number 1.
And I'm walking out.
No, but Ant-Man, I personally is one of my favorite heroes. I think especially the movies bringing him to the forefront of pop culture is fantastic. You know, there's been 3 over the years as far as I've know. It's Hank Pym as the original, as with Janet Van Dyne, and then Scott Lang took over after that. And then there was a weird time with Eric O'Grady.
He was known as the irredeemable Ant-Man.
I'm ashamed to share the same name as him. But each of them have like such unique stories and history. And I'm like you said before, when certain characters take over a mantle, I like it when each one feels unique, like different eras and different styles of writing and action and comedy and set pieces and all that. But I think I want to stick with Scott Lang for the majority of my talk,
sure.
because of the movies. Paul Rudd is a saint. But Paul
Rudd is actually number 1 on our list. Like, forget Ant-Man.
Yeah. This is 9 insect heroes and Paul Rudd. But one of my favorite things about Ant-Man is that it's inherently one of the silliest characters of all time, kind of up there with Aquaman. And like, how could this possibly be translated into something filmable, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that they had knocked that out of the park and then brought him to other Avenger movies and to his own sequel and hopefully more movies and series as the day is long. And that each director gets to use him just like in the comics, that each writer would be able to put him in such unique situations that they'd have to like write themselves out of, or like, you know, like Hawkeye and Ant-Man teaming up and sitting his little butt on the arrow and flinging it, or crawling into God knows where to defeat evil. It's so cool. And I love the little, I'm just going to gush this whole time, but like little hints in the movies, like to his almost Tinkerbell like status of like caring for his daughter, Cassie, who eventually also becomes an insect related hero. Which
yes. Young Avenger is what was.
But he's such an underdog character, at least to me. Ant-Man is like, he was a thief. He came up wanting to do good, but kept getting drawn into like the criminal world. But that's like that. It's not anti-hero, but it's like conflicted. Like I think that's really neat that someone like Hank Pym can see that within him, because he also has his own inner demons, and give him that platform to redeem himself. Not Eric O'Grady, who's irredeemable, but Scott Lang.
Yeah, I was going to say also, because of the three Ant-Men, I mean, Hank Pym did set a lot of precedents, and especially in the Tales to Astonish era, like he wasn't because nowadays most people kind of think Hank Pym, even in the movie, they kind of made him a gruff and stern figure. And the second movie really got a little bit more into the heart of his relationship with Janet and his care for his daughter. But in the comics, he started good. I mean, no one's going to seriously... Marvel couldn't demand you to take a character named Ant-Man too seriously.
Sure.
But he kind of descended into villainy almost inadvertently with incidents that happened in the comics, and now his whole conflict with Ultron. I mean, that's a lot of his relevance nowadays, is the fact that like Ultron's based on his brain scans, and that like he has his own inner demons. And then of course we've got a guy whose most famous panel was him creeping on a female superhero in the shower. Yeah. So you've got the second, you got the middle Ant-Man, you got the nice sweet spot where it's like he's not a bad person. He's done some bad things, but it doesn't define him as a person. And I'm always a sucker for the good superhero dads, because like I love Luke Cage. He's one of my absolute favorites, and like nothing gets me more than a big strong superhero dad who like has time for his daughter. And fun fact, Scott Lang dated not Captain Marvel, dated Jessica Jones. Captain Marvel set them up in the original Alias series.
Whoa. Yeah. I had no idea.
Scott Lang had quite a life. He's just such a fun dude. And the fact that the movies were such a success and they were able to kind of make that character a household name.
It's crazy. It's made like he's been part of like $4 billion worth of movie franchises, and it's Ant-Man. He shrinks and he can get big, but like sometimes it's just one time and then he needs a nap. And Captain America remembers his name, and it's so charming. I love Ant-Man.
Yeah,
he's number one for me.
Yeah, and Anthony and who were the other? What were the other ants?
Oh, Antonio Banderas.
There we go. I mean, those ants are also like the heroes. They're up on the platform with him on our number one pedestal, but you can't see them because they're so small.
Yeah, it's really, really tight. The pedestal is a nail.
What is this? A pedestal for ants? So Ant-Man is unequivocally number one on our list, and mostly Scott Lang, but I mean, there is no denying the legacy.
If anybody wants to counter argue, I'll fight you.
And that'll be in the next podcast. That's in the contract, is that he gets to fight anyone who said that Ant-Man shouldn't be number one. But it is fun that, and taking out the arachnids from this list, we still had plenty of characters to fill a list. And I mean, I'm going to shout out a couple of characters we tossed around. There is a character called the Fly, who is not the Jeff Goldblum one. There was Green Hornet we could have done. There's so many insect characters. Once you hit Ambush Bug, you're kind of like, all right, we're really
at some point
here.
You think like the writers are just like run out of superheroes to create, so they're just like go for a walk outside and be like, oh, look at that thing on the ground. we'll make a superhero out of it.
Where's Worm Man?
Yeah, worm.
He only comes out when it rains.
That's his power.
And then if he doesn't get back inside, then he dries up on the pavement. No. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this this exciting little romp. Now we've of course got a total infestation of insects here, and I think we're gonna move to recap the list just in case you guys forgot anything that we talked about.
Yep, this is how you get ants.
So, to recap our list, the honorable mention goes to Spider-Man, Scorpion, the Tick, any other arachnid-themed characters. Number 10 is Ambush Bug. Number 9 is Bug. Number 8 is Firefly. Number 7 is Killer Moth. Number 6 is Mantis. Number 5 is Bumblebee. Number 4 is Yellow Jacket. Number 3 is Blue Beetle. Number 2 is the Wasp. And number 1 is Ant-Man. So did we pick the most interesting insects for our countdown, or should we spray this list down and start all over again? If we missed someone that you think should be on the list, be sure to check out our blog and send us your opinions at podcasts@sideshow.com. And that was our top 10 bug-themed comic book characters. Do you enjoy the Geek Culture Countdown? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help keep us going. Please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcasts@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Plus, tune in for our other pop culture podcasts. See your favorite comic and film characters evolve across 2 generations in the bi-weekly Then and Now podcast. Hear exclusive interviews with celebrities and pop culture industry leaders as they let their geek side show in Look Who Showed Up. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of all the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.